OFOTA, or OFOTA, is an advanced 2x2 method that works like this. First, you make a first layer, or a first face, with two opposite colors. Then, while you are orienting the top layer, you put all of these pieces into their corresponding layer. And then you do permutation of both layers. This method is similar to Stern Sun, and it is algorithm heavy. But this method, its algorithms are kind of awkward and hard to remember. So I'd recommend that most definitely you would know either Stern Sun or EG first, and then learn this method as something to fall back on if you have a bad case with either of those. Probably EG or CLL though, because Stern Sun and OFOTA are so closely related that it's pretty much the same thing. If you're looking into advanced methods for the 2x2, you should be able to intuitively make a first layer of opposite colors out of this pretty easily. Like, for example, here, just E prime R prime, and you have this first face right here. That should be no problem for you before you learn this method. So your first step should be very intuitive and take 1 or 2 steps at the most. And so, here are the algorithms. The algorithms for case 1, which is where you have an L right here and one mismatched color right here, are the exact same as those for Stern Sun. So I would recommend going and watching my tutorial on Stern Sun for those algorithms if you don't already know them. So case 2 is where we have a bar here and a bar here. First case, very easy, everything oriented. This just needs to go down here. R2. This case, very simple as well. These two need to go down here. R2 U prime, R2 U prime, R2. Now we get into these cases where you have a T-perm kind of situation. This particular case, where you put these two down here, you do R prime U2, R prime U2, R prime. This case, where these two need to go down here, is R, F prime, U prime, R. This case, where these two need to go down here, is F, U2, F, R2, U2, F. Next we have this case right here with these two unoriented pieces. For this particular case, where we need to have these two pieces going down here, we do F prime U, F, R, U prime, R. For this case, where we have these two pieces that need to go down here, we do R2, U prime, R, F, U prime, R prime. For this case, where we have these two pieces that need to go down here, we do F2, U prime, R, U, F prime, R. Now we have the nice double soon case. And for this particular case, where we have these two in the back that need to go down here, we do R2, U2, R prime. For this case, where we have these two that need to go down to the bottom, we do F2, R2, U2, F. For this case, where we have these two opposite corners that need to go to the bottom, we do R, U prime, F, R prime, F prime, R. Now we have the pi case. And for this particular case, where these two pieces need to go down here, we do R prime, U prime, F U prime, R2, F, R. For this case, where we have these two pieces needing to go down here, we do fu prime r2u2 fr. For this case, where we have these two diagonal pieces needing to be moved down to the bottom, we do r prime u fu f2 r prime f prime. Now we go to the diagonal misoriented position, and for this case, where you have these two pieces that need to move to the bottom, you do f2 r prime u r prime f prime. For this case, where you have these two pieces that need to go to the bottom, you do r2 fr f prime. For this case, where you have these two diagonal pieces that need to move to the bottom, you do f2 ru f prime r f2 r prime. Now we move on to the soon cases, and for this case, where you need to have these two pieces move to the bottom, you do fr f prime r2 u prime r prime. For this case, where you have these two pieces that need to move to the bottom, you do r2u2 f u prime r prime. For this case, where you need to have these two opposite corners moved down to the bottom, you do r2 u prime f u prime r prime. Now we move on to the anti-soon cases, and for this case, where these two pieces need to move to the bottom, you do f2 r2u2 r prime fr. For this case, where you need to have these two corners moved to the bottom, you do f u2 r2 u prime f. For this case, where you need to move these two opposite corners into the bottom, you do r2u r prime u r. And that's it for the two solid blocks configurations.